Thanks, Coach. Thanks, Jax. Right now we're rejoined by NBC Sports' Keith Arnold, the 2002 grad. We talked, it seemed like an eternity ago at 8 a.m. 22 young men have committed to play football here. Your thoughts on the big picture as they continue to develop what is turning out to be just a fantastic class?
Yeah, the day's really gone according to plan, all things considered. You know, it looks like Notre Dame's probably got, 5 guys that could turn into stars, at least if you look at them on paper. And then, for every guy that looks like maybe just a program player, there are players like Kavari Russell who show up out of nowhere and become, starting cornerback.
5 players you said that could be stars. Who do you think those are?
Yeah, you got to look at, Jalen Smith. I think anytime that's the highest rated defensive player Notre Dame's ever signed in the modern recruiting era. So, that he's been committed to the Irish for so long probably takes away a little bit of the pom-poms and cheerleading you hear about, but it's like it doesn't get any better than Jalen Smith. You've got guys like Isaac Rochelle who, had SEC offers from all around the South. He ends up coming here for the second time. Notre Dame has really kind of poached a guy out from, the SEC's grasp. Cole Luke is a guy who could probably walk in and play immediately. Greg Bryant, there's, Max Redfield. There's a lot of, wattage of star caliber players.
I want to ask you about Jalen Smith and maybe fitting into Bob Diaco's defense, that outside linebacker position. That's one that has a lot of faces with the fingers down or they're up or in their NASCAR speed rush package. How do you see him just fitting in at that outside linebacker position and contributing?
He doesn't really fit the model and mold that Bob Diaco and this defense has built. They've been looking for bigger outside linebackers, 6'5", 6'6" guys like Ben Council, person who can hold the edge. Even Danny Spahn is probably a little bit on the smaller side, and Prince Shembo. But with a guy like Jalen Smith, you feel like you have a new Ferrari in the garage. You don't know what he's going to do, but I wrote about it today. You could arguably make the argument that he could be the team's best cover corner. He could be the team's best pass rusher. He could be the team's best sideline to sideline player, and he could probably go over to the offensive side of the ball and play running back and wide receiver too.
On the offensive side of the ball, 5 offensive linemen committed to play here, and he stands as a guy with his resume speaks for himself. For the Bears, Tennessee, he's done it all, and he really brought a culture to this line. Steve Elmer's a guy that a lot of guys are high on. How do you see that playing out?
When this class came together, I think a lot of people were wondering, why are they signing so many tackles? It seemed like everybody was a left tackle or a right tackle mold guy. You've got big, tall guys. Everyone seemed to be at least 6'5" or 6'6". I think McGlinchey's somewhere like 6'8". But if you look at what this class is doing, and the guy like Hunter Bivin probably comes onto campus with a little bit of flexibility, but they really solidified the inside of their offensive line, which I think is going to be a key with Chris Watt in his final year of eligibility, with an open spot at center, an open spot at right guard. So I think, you got to be careful not to let there be too many gaps in your offensive line, especially when it takes a couple years to get these guys to develop. But it certainly is a good start.
And in that wide receiver position, guys like James Onwalu, who we talked about a little bit earlier, William Fuller is a guy a lot of people are high on, Torrey Hunter Jr., and Corey Robinson. How are they going to fit in the mold of what Coach Dim Brock, Coach Martin, Coach Alford are trying to do there?
Yeah, I think you look at some of these guys, they seem to have some flexibility between, inside and outside receiver, but there's not a ton of depth at the outside receiver positions. You're looking at T.J. Jones now is going to be this is his final year, I think, and he started as a slot guy. So there's a lot of people that are worth watching. I think it'll be fun to see Corey Robinson in the spring. This is going to have to be a head-spinning time for a kid who hasn't played a lot of football. And then Onwalu, where does he go? I don't know. He's I guess slated to start as an outside guy, but he could move in. And I do think Will Fuller is going to be a really fun kid to watch. I think they see him as a downfield threat.
12-0 in the regular season last year, a trip to the national title game. How do they build off that success? What is the next step maybe for this program in 2013?
Yeah, from a narrative perspective, it's pretty easy to see what needs to happen. Obviously, the 12-0 turned into 12-1, and that 28-point differential told you everything you needed to know. I think from an inspiration, if you look at reasons to have fuel in your fire this spring, I think you just go back and look at Alabama for these guys. But, this is a huge evolutionary step. In many ways, people thought next year, or the 2013 season, was going to be that season. I think Jack Swarbrick talked about it. A lot of people have been pretty open about it. where does Notre Dame start in the preseason polls? What do they do this spring to kind of build on what they had from last year? It's going to be a really talented team next year. It's going to be a lot of fun to follow. It might not be the unexpected trip that we had this year, but it was. There's a lot of expectations.
It was definitely a magic ride for everyone involved in the program. I hate to put you on the spot. Some storylines that you'll be keeping an eye on as spring ball comes up.
I think, I always like to look at the early enrollees, see what happens. I think the quarterback position is a big question. Obviously, Everett Golson kind of solidified his role as a starter, but there's Gunnar Kiel. There, everybody knows Tommy Reese isn't going anywhere. What happens with Andrew Hendricks? Is it possible to keep 5 scholarship quarterbacks that are all pretty proficient guys happy and on campus? So that'd be one. I think, who comes in and takes Manti Te'o's place, who fills in for Zeke Motto. What's going to happen at safety? We went from having no safeties at Notre Dame to having, like a dozen? So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there.
Kind of rounding it out here, you went here, you graduated from 2002. It's different here. What makes this place so special? What appeals to kids when coaches come into their families' living rooms and saying, this is Notre Dame, it's not like anywhere else?
Yeah, I think if you read recruiting articles, and I don't do a ton of recruiting coverage because it's pretty all-encompassing, but you kind of hear the party line when these guys talk of 40-year decision instead of 4-year decision. It's really tough to listen to. Sometimes Notre Dame gets a bad rap because graduates are very happy to tell you about how different it is and how special it is, and not everybody wants to hear it. It's college football. So, but it is a place that feels different. I'm glad I went here. It does cloud my objectivity sometimes, and it's difficult to have friends calling and emailing and saying what's wrong with this guy when you're trying to just try to cover the story and not screw it up. So I don't know. I think it tells itself. There's tradition that you don't see at many other places. You've got a stadium that's full every weekend. You've got a fan base that's coast to coast, that's in Ireland, that's wherever Notre Dame's going to go, they're going to be there. So I think that that does a nice job, and adding in good football always helps too.
Thank you, Keith. Keith Arnold with the NBC Sports.